So if you need to move into a bigger pot, like I did, go right ahead. Just make sure you get all the cream out of the old pot into the new one. I swear this show should really just be called Chef Tyler Doesn't Know the Size of His Pots. Hey everyone, welcome back to Chef Tyler's Croatian Kitchen. This week we're going to be trying our hand at baking once more with Mađarica. Mađarica translates to English as Hungarian cake, and I know what you might be thinking, and you would be correct. This cake has absolutely nothing to do with Hungary. Yes, despite its name, if you were to go to any pastry shop in Hungary, you would not find this cake. It is only a Croatian thing. Why it's called Mađarica, we don't know. We really don't know anything about the origins of this cake. We just know that at some point in the 19th century, it started popping up in Croatian slastičarne or pastry shops, and it's been here ever since. The closest thing that you could find to a Mađarica in Hungary is, and I'm going to butcher this pronunciation, an Esterházy torte, which is also a layered cake, but it has layers of meringue and buttercream. You could also find a doboš cake, which has layers of sponge cake and chocolate cream, but it's topped with caramel. That's a little bit more closer to a Mađarica, but it's still not quite the same. So we've talked a lot about what a Mađarica is not. How we talk about what it is. A Mađarica is a layered cake with layers of flaky pastry dough and chocolate cream. There's always an odd number of dough layers. The amount of layers can vary, but usually between 5 and 8 is common. And it's topped with a chocolate glaze. They're typically given in small finger-sized pieces that you can eat with your coffee. I actually have some here that I bought at the store, so this is what they are supposed to look like, and we will see if mine looks like this as well. I am feeling a bit better about this one than I did with the kremšnita. I think the issue with the kremšnita was the whipped cream. I didn't fortify it. In this case, we don't have to worry about that because we're just going to put the chocolate glaze on top of the cake, so we don't have to worry about it mixing with anything. So with that little intro aside, let us get into the ingredients. For the cake, we will need all-purpose flour, powdered sugar, sour cream, butter, baking powder, and 2 eggs. For the cream, what we'll need is cake flour, liter of milk, chocolate, and sugar. And butter. Don't forget the butter. There's always butter. And lastly, for the chocolate glaze, it's going to be very similar to the one we did with kremšnita. It's butter and chocolate. Just the ratios this time will be a bit different. There'll be more butter, makes it a little more spready. Alright, let's get this out of the way and we'll start with making the cake layers. So we're going to start now with the dough. I have a big bowl and my scale. I just have the bowl on the scale and it has already been tared. I'm going to start by taking all-purpose flour and adding 500 grams. This is new flour too. So always put it like this because I don't know why the flour always leaks, and it's 2024, why can't we figure out how to package flour without it getting everywhere? But anyway, we need 500 grams of flour. Sugar's going to poof everywhere. I can't imagine this is healthy breathing this in, but right, 200 grams of confectioner sugar. And try not to breathe it in. And we'll add in 1 packet of baking powder. Baking powder, not baking soda. This baking powder, it is 12 grams. Once everything is in our bowl, we'll just remove from the scale and give it a little mix to get sure everything combines together. You could also do this with a whisk, but I had the spoon here already. Once everything has been combined together, we'll put it back onto the scale, tare, and it's time to add in the butter. Now we're going to want small pieces of butter. And now this is the part where it becomes kind of like a flaky pie crust. We're going to use it with our hands and we're just going to smush the flour into the butter. There's definitely more flour than there is butter, so don't worry if you don't get everything in there, but just try to really incorporate whatever butter you do have into the flour. And this is why it's like a flaky pie crust, not an actual flaky pie crust, because you don't have as much butter to really make it in that flaky way. Once you get the butter as incorporated with the dough as you can, time to add in the egg. It might not look like you've done much of anything, but this is what you're supposed to do. Promise you it will work in the end. So once you've incorporated the butter as much as you can, we'll take 2 eggs and add them into the bowl, as well as 200 grams of sour cream. And then I'll just use the spoon and start mixing everything in together. First, I'm going to try to beat these eggs together. You could also do this by hand, but since I have the spoon already dirty, I might as well start it like this and then move into using my hand. It will be quite sticky, but once it basically comes together, we will now weigh the dough. The reason we're going to weigh the dough is because we need to split this into 5 parts. Here we go. I'm going to try to get as much out that I can. I don't want to waste any of it. Even though, gosh, this is so sticky. One way to get over the stickiness is just wet your hands. Just a little bit, and then everything comes off quite nicely. You're adding a bit of moisture into the dough, sure, but it's not too much. Okay, that looks to be as much of it that I can get. This dough seems to be just about 1,000 grams, so 1 kilo, which is perfect for math. Now I'm going to start taking pieces of the dough off the scale. And since it was 1,000 grams total, I'm going to want each piece to be 200 grams because we're pouring this into 5, if I didn't say that already. And just keep pulling it off because it's already on the scale, so I don't think it makes much of a difference which way I do it. Okay, into a little ball onto the paper, and we'll do this for 5 pieces. And now we have our 5 pieces of dough. These 5 pieces will correlate to our, obviously, 5 layers. Now, this next part we're going to need a lot of baking paper, as you can see. So I have 1 baking tray here that I've already lined with paper. And since my baking tray is only big enough for 1 at a time, we have to do this, unfortunately, 1 at a time. What do I mean big enough? So here's a springform pan, same one I used last week with crème or a few weeks ago. And this is where we're going to build the cake. So in order to ensure that our pieces are of the right size, if you take this piece of baking paper that I have folded in half, wrong way, I'm going to put the springform pan down on top, and with a marker, I'm just going to trace the outline of this springform pan. What's important now is that I see it, and when you do it, it's important that you see yours. So we'll need a bunch of things. First, of course, the rolling pin, and of course, one of our pieces of dough. So just get it up, throw it here in the middle, try to get as much of it as we can. All right. So the reason we're doing it between these 2 pieces of parchment paper is because it's so freaking sticky. And we just want to now roll out the dough so that it fits in between the outline that we have made. Well, my paper broke, but we got as close as I can. And now we'll just take this onto the baking tray. Once our oven has come up to temperature, we'll put this in for 9 minutes. We do not want this to get golden. We want to keep it white, but cooked through. And after 9 minutes, remove from the oven and let cool on the paper. So the cakes have cooled down, and as you can see, they are not the same size. For now, it's fine. I'm just going to cut off this front part because they're very obviously different there, whereas the other 3 sides, they look more the same. So at the top one looks to be the smallest, so we'll just cut straight across and down. And these extra pieces, I mean, we can just eat them. So we will go ahead later and cut the rest of the sides to make it more actual square, and then we'll get rid of these burnt on bits. Not burnt, but the colored bits. You want the cake to stay light. All right, I'm going to leave this off to the side now. It's time to get working on the cream filling. So now it's time to make the cream. To do so, we will take milk and we'll pour about 100 or so milliliters into this bowl, and the rest we'll put into this pot that we'll put onto the stove to come to a boil. We need 1 liter of milk, and this entire carton was 1 liter, so I didn't have to measure really anything out. All right, This now, like I said, goes on the stove, bring it up to a boil. If it comes to a boil before you've finished everything else, just set it to the side. And now into this bowl, we will add 200 grams of sugar. Ooh, there we go. Everything seems to be new today. And then 90 grams of cake flour. Off the scale, and with a whisk, we will whisk this together. If you do need more milk, just grab some from the pot that's coming up to a boil. And once this mixture is no longer grainy, we'll go ahead and add it into the milk that's on the stove. It's okay if it hasn't yet come to a boil when you add this mixture, but wait until it does come to a boil for the next part. For the next part, we'll turn the heat down and add in 200 grams of chocolate and mix together until the chocolate incorporates with the cream. Once it is incorporated, add 250 grams of butter in small pieces and mix until it forms a smooth cream. Once it's done, take it off the heat. So now it's time to add the cream onto the cake. According to the recipe, you're supposed to do this immediately after cooking the cream because it's warm, it's easier to spread out. However, last time I made Mađarica about a year ago, I did a very similar thing and it didn't work. So let's give this a go. Well, let's get a ladle full of the cream and over into the middle. Okay, this definitely holds its shape much better than the first one. The first one isn't the one I did last year, so let's get another ladle. We can add two, I think. Hopefully I'm not being like Icarus and flying too close to the sun. And this is still really hot. You can see all the steam coming off of it. Although I'm not sure if that's because I have the air conditioner on. Could be both. But right on top. Okay, it moves around. And with the spatula, we'll spread the cream. There's about a fourth of this goes on this layer, and the fourth on the next, because there's 4 chocolate layers. But this is holding its shape really well. I am feeling like I can go ahead. So I'm not going all the way to the sides, because like I said before, we're gonna trim the sides. And if the top layers do start to push the cream out, I'd rather there be some buffer. Get our other piece. I'm gonna line it up with that line there. And we'll finish up adding the cream onto the cake. Okay, so this actually is looking kind of nice, even though it's spilling out the front. That was partially my fault because I pushed it all the way there. So I have a plate here. I'm just gonna lift this up. Put it on the plate. Does it fit? And I'm gonna put this into the fridge and let it cool completely. The recipe says overnight. I think at least a few hours will be good enough. So once it has cooled down, we'll start doing the chocolate glaze and then we will finish the cake. So it's been a few hours. The Mađarica is still in the fridge, leaving it in there just so it stays nice and cool. Now it's time to make the chocolate glaze. So already in here I have some butter, 100 grams coming up to melt. And we're just going to do the same thing like we did in the creme sheet episode and add in our ribs of chocolate. Once again, if you can use a double boiler, it's more recommended that you do it that way, but I'm doing it this way because, well, for reasons I said last time, I know what I'm doing. Now with the spatula, we'll just stir this together. I'll turn the heat down. Remember, this is now a game of playing with heat. So once it has gotten nice and smooth, we'll take it off the heat and we'll bring out the Mađarica and we'll pour this on top. So here we have the Mađarica and here we have our chocolate glaze. You can see that the Mađarica has kind of shifted, so maybe I shouldn't have cut this off when I did, but it's fine. We'll just have some extra scraps. This part's really easy. It's gonna be much easier than when we did creme sheet. We're just going to pour the glaze on top, just like such. And now we'll just move the glaze around. It's okay if it falls down the sides because we're going to cut off the sides. We want to get a nice even coat along the top layer of the cake. Right, and back into the fridge this goes to let cool for another, let's say, 2-ish hours or until the glaze has solidified. So after 2 or so hours in the fridge, the Mađarica is cooled, the chocolate is hard. It's time to now trim the excess. So very carefully, I'm just gonna pick it right up and put it onto this board. And then go away. Actually, Just going to the sink. So at this point, I'm just going to trim the edges and make this into an actual square. So bear with me for a few seconds. Okay, but at least the cross section looks amazing. So now the only thing to do is cut these into pieces. So more cutting, but I'll be quick. Well, they're quite big, but let's plate these up and then we will compare with the ones I bought from the store. Well, you can definitely tell which is which. Here's a little side-by-side comparison. Wow. So these actually have 6 layers and mine only have 5. But my layers are way bigger. So I remember before I was complaining that they shrunk, so I couldn't use the springform pan. I think I probably could have rolled the dough out a little bit thinner so it actually was bigger than the pan, and that way when it shrunk it would have fit. I think that was a problem, but like I'm really happy at least with the proportions. So the proportion of the size of the cake to the size of the cream is actually pretty good. Let's go ahead, we'll give mine now a taste for Greg. It's very soft, like as it's supposed to be. It's not supposed to be crunchy. I'm sure chocolate all over my face, I can feel it. But I'm gonna just confirm. It tastes very similar to this one. I do like mine more. I think the chocolate taste here is a little bit better. This has something in it. It's also a lot softer, but you can tell that on this one, the dough is definitely so much thinner than mine. But I mean, this is homemade, so who cares? I definitely do like mine better, aside from the fact that I have to unhinge my jaw to take a bite of this. It's still really good. Well, this was Mađarica, and we succeeded this time, unlike with the Croatian, so maybe baking isn't so hard. If you liked what you saw, please hit like and subscribe, and doba tek. It's like I'm huffing this convection sugar. No way that's good.